when parents are responding to their children with connection, we're going to see adults that have much less hurt to act out on. And it's that hurt that drives us to plunder our planet's resources and make off-track decisions, kind of fosters greed and consumerism and a lack of consciousness around the planet. When we're building humans that are less damaged, we're going to start seeing a world that's less damaged. And I really don't think that that's going to take a long time.
For episode 30, my guest is Roma Norriss, a mother, a doula, a breastfeeding counsellor and a parenting consultant. She works with hand-in-hand parenting, which is a different approach she will explain during this conversation. Roma is interested in parenting as a potent form of activism and is inspired by the work of Robert Grill, who in his book, Parenting for a Peaceful World, has identified a link throughout history between progress in parenting or education and a tangible movement towards democracy and sustainability within one generation in that society. As you know, I do all my podcast interviews in person, which makes it more time-consuming and harder to get the guests I want. But it makes the conversations more intimate and the whole thing feel more connected, which is ultimately what it's about. I always ask guests for 2 hours minimum, which some people feel is too much, but is necessary for a recorded interview of around an hour. This one raised the bar. The interview started with dinner and ended with an unexpected sleepover as I was a bit tired to head to my next destination. Roma models connection and care, as although we have mutual friends, this was our very first meeting. It's these small acts of relating that really can create bigger change. Before we get to the interview, just a thank you to each one of you for your support in creating and building this show. We really appreciate it. And we love hearing from you about what has moved you that you've heard on the show and how it's impacted you in your life. We want to share your thoughts, stories and questions in a special episode. So record us a voice note on your phone and send it to us by email to connect@thefutureisbeautiful.co. And of course, if you'd like to support us by making a monthly donation, please go to our website and click on Community and Support. For all the women listening, I'm doing a live week-long Wild Grace retreat in Spain this autumn, which is all about coming out of the boxes as a woman that we've put ourselves in, put each other in, or been put in by society, and embracing more aspects of the feminine experience. It's a beautiful week with yoga, mythology, mantra, ritual, psychology, and more. For full details, visit www.amisha.co.uk and click on calendar. I hope that you enjoy this week's conversation after this. Welcome to The Future is Beautiful, with me, your host, Amisha Gadiali. On this show, we explore the weave between politics, spirituality, creativity, and sustainability. Every one of us has ideas and personal experiences to share that can lead us to a brighter future, despite the challenges we face as a global community or the pressures that we meet in our daily lives. When we stop and dare to dream, to ask ourselves the big questions and to share what we are already doing, we create the future that we wish to wake up for. That future is beautiful. I am delighted today to be joined by Roma Norriss, who is a parenting consultant and a doula. Welcome to the show, Roma.
Thank you. So glad to be doing this.
And I'm really excited that we're speaking today because when we talk about the future and creating a beautiful future, often we think about children and our future generations and what we're leaving for them. There's this saying that we've not inherited the future from the past, but we're borrowing it from our children. And so the sense of what we're doing now is really setting things up for them. And yet, one conversation that is rarely mixed in with these other conversations around sustainability and around society and what we're creating is how we're actually parenting our children, what skills we're giving to our children and who we're allowing our children to be when we bestow this thing of the future to them. And I feel like I'm not a parent yet, hope to be one day, but I have a lot of friends who are. Conversations around parenting can get quite separate to who someone is in the rest of their life and how they're contributing to society in other ways. Yeah, there's some weird dividers around who someone might be at home and who they're at work.
Yeah.
So I'd really love to just open that all up. And maybe you can tell us why you became a parenting consultant and why that's important.
Yeah, you're right. It's very segmented parenting, and that's part of the thing that needs to shift around it. So I guess I've come to birth work and parenting work as an activist and as a futurist, and that's not something I usually get to talk about very often.
You're in the right place.
Yeah, so it's a really gorgeous opportunity to talk about some of those ideas. Partly what has been driving me, and I guess this is probably the case with most activists, has been my own hurt from my own birth and my own experience of being parented that has made me strongly driven to find a different way. But I also see that birth and parenting is a fast track in terms of really creating change in society, because it really just takes one generation of parents to get it, and we're going to see a very different world from what's happening now. And it feels like the most useful place to direct my energy in terms of making change, because it can happen on such a wide scale. And it's the wide scale that really lights me up, actually. I could say a bit more about why I believe it's so potent in terms of eliciting change.
Yeah, please do.
The way that we are being born on this planet right now generally involves, for many of the souls coming through, quite a good amount of shock and trauma and hurt and separation. We've been disconnected from our bodies as women. Birth has been very medicalised. There's a really different way for babies to be born from what is currently prevailing. My experience as a birth worker and as a mother having birthed 2 babies at home is that birth can be so joyful and connected and even ecstatic. So for my daughter's birth, I actually had like orgasmic, ecstatic sensations going on in my body. I held her on my skin naked for the first 3 weeks of her life. And it can really be a very whole, very relaxed, very supported integration into life. And for most of us, that's not what our early experiences were about. The birth experience is so fundamental because it's our initial imprint. It's where we take on all kinds of beliefs about ourselves and the world. All the experiences that follow that are very much informed by that initial imprint. Birth is more fundamental than we really realise. It affects all of us more deeply in terms of the way that we think and the decisions that we make and the beliefs that we hold. And then in terms of parenting, the value of parenting is widely acknowledged. Yet we seem to be stuck in this quite archaic paradigm around parenting. Reward and punishment-based mentality. We often see children's behaviour as naughty or difficult. We sort of seeing them as the enemy. There's a really different way to be doing this.
So even just kind of like the joking sort of, oh, the little monsters kind of way of dealing with it.
Right, we do that a lot. It's totally understandable because that's the paradigm that we've all been brought up, raised in. So it goes in automatically. Yeah, in terms of creating a society where we can really relate to each other from a place of no blame, the way that we're raising our children is really founded on blame and shame and right and wrong. It's really essential that we move beyond that.
And that if you do this, I'll give you this.
Exactly.
And if you don't do this, I'll take the punishment, I'll take it away. But a lot of the bribing as well.
Exactly. So we're teaching our children to edit themselves, through either withholding or giving rewards, trying to coerce their behaviour because we believe that we need to get them to behave. That's our job as parents. What hand-in-hand parenting puts forward, and this is an approach that was brought about by Patty Whitfler, who is a phenomenal woman in the States. She's the founder of Hand in Hand. She's brought a level of consciousness to understanding what children are trying to express through their behaviour, to understanding what parents are needing. She's created this approach that allows parents to learn very pragmatic ways to connect with their children and to understand really what's happening in these tricky situations that we bump up against day in and day out.
Can you give us an example?
So just moving away from this kind of, we've got to civilise these little rascals and make sure that they're going to be okay humans, towards an understanding that our children are good. Mm-hmm. They're already really sweet, caring little humans. They're deeply generous. They want to get on well with each other. They love learning. They love playing. They know right from wrong. They're much more tuned into morality than a lot of adults who have kind of lost that strong sense that we maybe had when we were 5. They already know all the rules. They're deeply tuned into what the big people are doing around here because that's something that interests them a lot. So we think we have to teach them that it's not okay to throw the breakfast on the floor. But actually, they don't want to be throwing the breakfast on the floor. And when that happens, it's because they've lost a sense of connection with us. And they've been flooded with feelings as a result of that. And the feelings are inhibiting their thinking function in that moment. So they're having a temporary glitch. Thinking's offline. They can't remember not to throw the breakfast. They can just act out in a desperate way as a sort of signal that they're hurting and they need our help.
Yeah, sometimes the default is like, oh, they're just doing that for attention, just ignore them and they'll stop.
Yeah.
And actually it's like, well, if a 3-year-old needs some attention,
then
maybe we just give the 3-year-old some attention.
You can't have it when you're 3. Yeah. Yeah, they are doing it for attention, and attention is exactly what they should have. Mm-hmm. It's just really shifting the way we look at this stuff to a more loving perspective, and a perspective that's actually easier on parents, because we tend to be really hard on ourselves as parents and hard on each other, hugely judgmental. Society judges parents for everything they do. Actually, parents are really doing their best. They want to love their children well. It's something that pretty much all parents are deeply committed to. This approach extends to parents in terms of, holding that we're good. And when we can't respond in the most loving or caring or responsive way that we'd like to, it's because we're also full of feelings. And in that moment, we can't think well. We start acting out. Yeah, the offer is a way for the parents to find the connection that they need in order to keep their thinking going well, so that they can be much more available for their kids, and then in turn help them when they lose their ability to think due to being flooded by feelings. And this is something that's physiological. It's happening in the brain.
So how do we do that?
How do we do it?
Yeah.
We teach 5 very simple to understand pragmatic tools. They're really easy to learn, but they're really hard to put into practice.
Mm-hmm. Like all good things.
They basically go against the grain of society and our conditioning. It's pretty brave work, actually. We think that when we have problems with our kids, we need to sort our kids out. But actually what's going on when we have problems with our kids is that we need to look at what we're doing that's causing our kids to get upset. The fundamental piece of this approach is something that we call listening partnerships. That's a practice where two adults exchange time to listen to one another with the focus on releasing emotion from the body. So this is a little known secret, which is that the body has an innate capacity to recover from hurt and trauma and stress and tension. And it does this through crying and laughter and shaking, trembling, yawning. Have you ever had a really good cry with a friend and then felt better afterwards?
I cry all the time.
Right.
Or I laugh. I laugh and I cry a lot.
Yes, yeah. Exactly. Sometimes both at the same time, right?
Yeah. Sometimes with my friends, sometimes just on my own. But it has to happen.
Yeah.
I spent years kind of holding some of that stuff in, and it was coming out then in all these warped ways in my interactions.
Yeah.
And now it's like, I know I just need to go and cry and just clear whatever that is that wants to be released.
Great.
And it's easier. But it's taken quite a lot of shame to work through in order to be comfortable with crying.
Yeah, big time. We have to undo the message from society that says shh since we were babies.
Yeah.
That has jiggled us on hips and told us to be brave and be a big girl and
stop being such a little girl.
Yeah.
I'm like, but I am a little girl.
Yeah. So we've really had strong messaging against crying, and we've learned to zip it and bottle it and hold it. And as you say, it comes out in all these warped ways in our thinking, and our bits of hurt leap out in all our interactions and all our relationships. It impacts on our ability to make good decisions, and we get these strong, rigid beliefs based on our feelings that have got kind of compacted in our body. It's relearning how to make use of the body's innate capacity for recovery. So that's what listening partnership gives you. And we learn to listen in a specific way that helps people feel their feelings more fully and release them.
And anger's a big one as well.
Particularly for women. For men, anger's often the go-to. But for women, we didn't have a lot of permission to get angry. In your listening partnership, you get to go and you get to bang on a pillow and say all the things to your kid that you didn't say because you were trying to be nice, or all the things that you wish you could say to your partner. Have an outlet for that stuff so that it doesn't seep into how you start feeling about that person that really you actually love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have some of those tactics of like, screaming in the forest, or banging pillows, or writing everything down and then like burning it.
Nice.
Burning it safely in safe ways, but just getting rid of it, all of those thoughts and those feelings and just a lot of it doesn't even need words. It's just like
emotional. Yes, yeah, exactly. So you're onto this.
Yeah, but I'm not a parent yet, so probably who knows? In that scenario, it would all come back because parenting triggers a lot, right?
It really does, yeah. So I think a lot of parents are wading through all these feelings that they didn't even know were there, that get brought up by giving birth or being pregnant or being with a child each day. Sometimes their gestures or behaviours subconsciously remind us of things that happened in our early life that we're still carting about with us because we've been told to zip it all this time and we couldn't make use of this recovery system.
So that's why you think that happens, because when we're pregnant or when we have kids, we're kind of going back into our own childhood.
Yeah, we call it re-stimulation, which is where something in the current moment is reminding your limbic system, your emotional brain, of a hurt that you're still carrying with you. And that's where you find yourself screaming in your 3-year-old's face and you don't really know why you're so angry. Perhaps it's because your dad used to get really angry with you if you would do that thing. We can get re-stimulated in all different kinds of ways, but basically along those lines.
And why you might then have more difficulties with your partner as well. I mean, obviously the stress of just having to, you didn't have to keep other human beings alive.
Yeah, if that wasn't enough.
But then obviously you're both being triggered, as well as having to give your attention and the sleep deprivation and all of that as well.
Exactly. I mean, the keeping humans alive and the sleep deprivation is hard going, but what's really hard and what's really tiring about parenting and what leads to burnout and frayed relationships is all the emotional content that we're having to process that weighs on us, and we don't have anywhere to go with it. It impacts on our levels of connection, and we end up feeling really isolated and alone and distant from our partners sometimes. This approach is really quite unique and completely life-changing in terms of offering a lifeline for parents to find the connection that we're all really seeking, a way out from this heavy, heavy load of emotional stuff that we don't even know really what it is, but we're just feeling intense. When we start doing that, it's amazing how we can react differently to our kids. So I might phone up a listening partner, and it's an exchange where I'll listen to them for 20 minutes and they'll listen to me for 20 minutes or whatever. I will talk about this situation that I've got going on with my kid's school and how frustrated I am with the headmaster and what I really want to say to him. And I might not feel necessarily even that different at the end of the listening partnership, but then I'll notice that something will change in the way I'm responding to my son, or when I next see the headmaster, I have something a bit more useful to say, or some load has lightened there and I can think better about the situation and be more responsive to what's in front of me. Yeah.
And so what's the second one?
Okay, so the second one is what we call stay listening. And that's where we learn how to listen to children in a way that they can really feel felt by us. That really involves helping them stay with their feelings rather than shutting them down, which is what we typically do as parents. We try to quickly fix the problem or distract them or scold them or bribe them just to get that noise to stop. Often the reason that noise is so intolerable is because it kind of causes all our own feelings to start swirling around. Most of us start to feel anxious when our children are getting upset. So we just try everything to make that stop. What's different about stay listening is that we're moving in and offering our attention and our warmth, saying, hey, love, I'm here. Oh, I see you're upset. We say certain things that help them stay with the upset. So instead of, hey, that's all right, your sister will have a turn and then you'll have a turn, we'll say, you really wanted that car. And they get to be upset about the car every time you say car. They get to feel that anew and cry and cry and cry, or rage, tantrum about it. Often this can take some time for them to really get through to the end of their upset. And when they can do that, they will feel a lot better afterwards. Generally, the upset about the car is not really the real upset.
So rather than kind of giving them a little, it will be your turn and the sharing and sort of shames their upset in a subtle way.
Or just wastes our really valuable warmth and attention, which is the thing that they really need. We're wasting that by trying to fix a situation using our thinking to try and make it all okay. But what our children really want is for us to get them and to be with them and to care about them.
And not just children. We want this from our adult relationships too.
Yeah, that's the secret about this approach, is that it's not just for children.
We're all children.
Yeah.
Okay, so the third one.
Third one's what we call special time. And that's where you offer a particular quality of attention that allows your child to really fill up on the kind of connection that they truly need. We give a lot of attention to our kids all the time. That's beautiful and that's really great that we do that. But the actual kind of attention that really allows them to feel safe and relaxed and deeply connected, to feel felt, which is what Dan Siegel coined it as. It's when we can offer it in a very specific way. So it's one-on-one. We set a timer and we give them full ownership over that time. So we say, hey, I want to play whatever you want to play. I'm all yours for the next 10 minutes. And for that 10 minutes, they get to decide and they get to feel powerful. They get our full delight shone upon them, which is, again, what all of us want, right? Mm-hmm. It sounds really simple, but it's something that's actually quite hard to do. I get major resistance against doing special time. I'm like, oh, don't make me do special time.
What do your kids normally ask for?
My daughter, she wants to be she's been stuck in the same special time for quite some time. She wants to be a leopard and I'm buying her from the zoo and she's escaping and I'm chasing her and she's growling at me and she's falling asleep and I'm saying how cute she is, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And my son, he's resisted special time for a long time. He had a more troubled time, which is what brought me into Hand in Hand. Initially, he would spend his special time just kicking the shit out of me, saying, go away, I hate you, leave me alone, I don't want special time. And I would just stay there going, hey, my timer's on, so I'm just going to be with you. Oh, I can't let you kick me, so I'm just going to hold your foot. I love being with you. And I would just delight in him kicking me as much as I could, but probably I was actually still getting quite triggered.
Why would you kick me?
Stop kicking me. I'm giving you my attention. Don't you know it's really hard for me to offer this to you? And so that's why I need listening partnership, and I take that to the listening partnership and go, I'm just trying to give the kid what he needs and I don't even want to do it really. And when I could vent that frustration, I've actually got to a place now where he can kick me for an hour. That's quite extreme because he's had this kind of rough start. But I really can just see him like, oh, sweetheart, you've had a rough day. And I don't feel like he's wrong, or I don't feel scared, or like I want it to stop or anything. I've finally got to this place, and it's taken years, where I can just really be with him in his upset. Mm-hmm. And then after a while, he'll tell me what's really going on, and we'll have a cuddle, and then he'll feel playful again. So that's special time. And then the next one is setting limits. We do this in quite a unique, I think this is completely radical, setting limits in a way that does involve absolutely no coercion, no shaming, no blaming, no cajoling, no bribing, threatening, none of that. What that involves is, firstly, we have to be responsive to the moment. Often as parents, you're told the key to good parenting is consistency. That's very much from this behavioural approach, which is like we have to teach our kids how to behave. And of course, we have to be consistent in that so that they know who's boss and they get to know what's right and wrong and they get to know what the rules are. But from this approach, which is a completely new paradigm of the kids already know, there's nothing to teach. All we have to be consistent with is connection. And that's going to look very different in each unique situation. The first element to setting a limit is really about kind of checking in with what's actually needed in this unique moment right now. You might think you need to set a limit because this certain thing is supposed to happen. But if you actually feel into what's right for right now to maximize connection, you decide maybe not to set the limit. Or you might check in with, how resourced am I? Am I actually resourced enough to set this limit in a kind way? Or do I want to back off until I've received some more listening time, or, had a nap or something like that? Mm-hmm. And then we talk about bringing the limit. So rather than like, Amisha, stop doing that, where I'm putting the onus on you to change your behaviour, and we're taking this strong understanding that children's behaviour in those moments where, like I said, they're throwing the breakfast, it's physiological. The feelings have swamped the emotional brain, which has hijacked the thinking brain. They have no impulse control. They can't make a different decision in that moment. So when I say, Amisha, stop doing that, I'm making you responsible for something that you cannot control right now. and I'm setting myself up to get angry with you if you don't do the thing that I'm asking you. Instead of making you stop, I'm actually going to make you stop. So I'm going to move my body across the room. I'm going to put myself physically wherever is needed to make the behaviour stop. So I'm going to stop. I'm going to hold your hand that's throwing the breakfast, or I'm going to put my body between you kicking your brother, or I'm going to...
It would be the other way around.
Right. Yeah, I'm going to block his kicks so that he doesn't kick you.
I did learn to kick back though, just for full disclosure.
Oh, I'm sorry you had to learn that. Yeah, I mean, how would that have felt to have someone actually move in like that when you were having sibling struggles? And he can't stop. If he's doing it, it's because he must. He has feelings driving him to kick you. There's no amount of, hey, stop that, that's actually really going to make a difference, sometimes on a surface level, but it's not actually addressing the underlying cause.
But isn't it just natural that siblings will kick each other?
No. I mean, it's very common, but it doesn't have to be that way at all. Sibling squabbles, they're driven by that hurt of there's not enough attention for me and you're the main competitor for it. But also I see the sibling relationship as sort of canary in the mine for the level of connection in the family. So the minute connection generally drops, the siblings start acting out as the first sort of sign of that. We call it stop me when siblings start fighting. It's a stop me signal. It's like they do the exact thing they know they're not supposed to do. And it's really quite an urgent cry for help. It's basically saying, Mom, Dad, I can't think well. Look, see, come and stop me. I need you, basically. That's the code.
But don't a lot of older siblings struggle when a new one comes along? Isn't that kind of natural to feel
Yeah, for
that?
sure. Yeah, that's usually a big hurt for most siblings. There can be some working out of that hurt that will help them get to a better place with their sibling. My son was absolutely adorable with his sister this weekend. Like, it was unbelievable how gorgeous he was. He was really taking care and taking time to play the way that she wanted to play and help her with things that she couldn't do. And I could never have imagined that, some years ago, where he was really going for her viciously. He hated her. We couldn't even keep them in the same space. We had to separate them at all times. And he had such a big hurt go in when she was born. I can remember him sitting in the car seat, looking over at her, this newborn baby, and he said, she's taken my whole life and my heart's broken and I'm going to be sad for a year.
Wow, how old was he?
He was 3.
Wow. Heartbreaking.
Yeah, and he really was sad for a year and some more. Yeah.
I mean, my brother was also very loving and sweet,
right,
as well. It wasn't like a continual kicking.
Yeah.
but different chapters and not a linear line.
Yeah. When those feelings swell of
whatever the root is.
Yeah, you're a threat to me. Yeah, or just general, I'm not feeling okay, so I'm going to take it out on you because you're the nearest thing.
Okay, the next one.
Yeah, listening partnerships, stay listening, special time, setting limits, and then the final one is play listening. And play listening is where we respond playfully, giving the child the more powerful role with the intention of releasing tension through laughter. Mostly the way that our parents or adults played with us was a kind of power over way. Like, they would be the big scary monster. We'd kind of like it, but we'd also be a bit scared. Or they would tickle us and we'd kind of laugh and we'd be glad that they were giving us their physical attention, but actually we didn't probably really enjoy being tickled that much. Maybe it felt quite horrible. This is kind of really reversing the roles so that they get to be the powerful one. Mm-hmm. And when they can do that, they get to really release some fear and tension through laughing hard. So we're just kind of diffusing these situations playfully. Like instead of getting into a headlock about toothbrushing, we'll say, "Ooh, what's this funny brush for? Shall I brush the toilet with it? Or shall I brush your ear? Or can I brush your knee?" And then they'll kind of giggle and go, "No, mummy, I'll show you, mummy." Or with an older child, for me, I find myself just kind of being really goofy with my boy, being quite idiotic or sometimes quite dark and surreal. We've got this silly game where we'll be walking along and we'll bump into each other and pretend that we're being really polite and go, oh, excuse me, oh, I'm so sorry, and then just keep banging into each other or being really silly. And it's such a relief to them when we play in that way. Mm-hmm. That's their language. It immediately says, I'm on your side. I get you. I'm with you. I'm not a threat to you. Yeah, so play listening we can use to work around specific situations. So if you've got a kid that's always really clingy and worried about being away from you, then every time they go out with another adult, you cling onto their ankles and cry that you can't bear that they're leaving. And they get to kind of laugh and say, "Stop it, mummy." Mm-hmm. Yeah. My brain's a bit tired to think of good play listening examples right now. Okay. But essentially, it's just injecting a kind of sense of playfulness and giving them the upper hand.
I mean, that's like quite often a parenting brain state, right?
What, that I'm too tired to play?
I'm too tired to think about what the right thing or like what the most loving or the most paradigm shifting thing to do is.
Yeah,
like often it's like, I've had a long day, these kids need to go to bed.
Yeah.
Like, and we kind of act out of the default.
Yeah, which is what our parents did to us. That's what happens, yeah. And most parents that I work with say that the biggest relief about learning this stuff is that they have a framework, like they know what to do. So even when you're really tired and you can't think how to react, you can just go back to these very simple tools and pick one of them that's going to take you in the right direction. So you kind of lose all the noise about what should I do and what are people going to think and is this the right way to respond and what impact is this going to have on him? Or a lot of our energy gets used up trying to figure it all out. And so it's just such a relief when you just have a very clear outline of, okay, this is where we're trying to gear our parenting towards.
And I guess if you go to just connecting as your default place to go, then you'll always find something.
Exactly, yeah. And you won't always manage. There's plenty of times where you'll be too tired or too triggered or overwhelmed and you'll fall back on those kind of default measures. And that's okay because they don't need us to do it all the time. They just need us to do it enough of the time. Mm.
So you mentioned that you had a difficult time with your son, and that's what led you into all of this. Can you share what happened?
Yeah, he was basically extremely distressed by the time he was 5, and it was really apparent that this was not normal development. He was losing it. He'd wake up screaming some days. He was having massive aggressive meltdowns, and he was a strong kid and he would go for it. He would go for me, he would go for his dad, his little baby sister, viciously. And he was also highly anxious and couldn't really make eye contact, wetting himself, couldn't sleep barely, really in a state, self-harming, biting himself, headbutting the floor, hitting himself, suicidal at times.
As a 5-year-old?
As a 5-year-old, and it just escalated from there. I found this approach when he was 6, and by the time he was 8, he was in a much better place, and he was able to start school for the first time. So all that time he hadn't been able to engage with school or even home education groups, really. I mean, he just couldn't handle people. All of it was just stress to him. He would get into all kinds of scrapes in public, like attacking people, swearing at people, throwing stuff around. And it was really stressful, and we were really in survival for years. I was beyond myself, just trying to get through the days and hating it, miserable and not knowing what to do and really trying to seek all these answers, and nothing was helping. hand in hand completely turned our family around and has completely transformed my life and myself on a personal level.
And did you feel a lot of shame?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, when your kid's that distressed, the only go-to is like, what am I doing wrong? How have I fucked my kid up so badly? Why is everybody else's child okay and mine's not? A lot of shame and a lot of fear, terror about what this means, and he's never going to be okay, and he's never going to have friends, and he's going to be in trouble, he's going to have mental health issues the rest of his life. That kind of stuff. That's what you're dealing with when you've got such extreme behaviour. Listening partnerships was the lifeline for me, and I really embraced it fully. I started doing them every day, like good long ones where we'd swap at least half an hour each. I cried and cried and cried about my situation and how hopeless it was and how frightened I was and how livid I was with my kid when he was kicking me and breaking my nose and giving me black eyes and scratching my lip and all kinds of stuff. I was furious with him. There was a time where I nearly hit him back, but I managed to just stop my hand just as I touched his cheek. But I was getting rough with him. I was grabbing him. I was, shoving him down. I can remember times where he wouldn't go to sleep and I was just pushing him down on the bed and I was really losing my shit. Yeah, I don't know. I like saying that I'm 90% less reactive to my kids now. I'd say it's probably even more than that. I don't ever shout at them anymore. I rarely even get triggered by them. It does happen occasionally. Mm-hmm. My brain is different now. I'm not holding all that tension and all those swirling feelings that were kind of leaping into all my interactions with them. I'm a much blanker canvas, and that makes me much more able to be with their experience rather than my own. Mm-hmm. And that has been directly as a result of listening partnerships, doing that very intensively, which not all parents need to do it to that degree, but I did, and I still do. Forever grateful that I stumbled across that.
And did this work give you a sense of why that was happening for him?
Yeah, so I started to understand that he was trying to recover. He was really wisely, his body was trying to offload the hurt that went in when he was a toddler and we had this really rough time. Yeah, he was signalling for connection, which I didn't really know how to give him and didn't actually have much to offer because I was so burned out and stressed and overwhelmed and so full of my own feelings. So gradually, as I could start lifting some of that out and learning what kind of connection he really needed and giving him more and more of that, his behaviour really started to change. It took a little while.
That's beautiful. And so then essentially, when we look at people in society that we label as criminals or no good or trouble or a wrong 'un or whatever it is, are all kids that didn't get the attention that they needed and the connection that they needed.
We know that the opposite to addiction is connection. If we can hold the premise that all children are good, we can certainly uphold that all humans are good. Mm-hmm. Those of us who are off track in our behaviours are just really hurting and needing connection that we didn't get. And it's a big piece of work to give an adult the connection that they never got as a child. Big piece of work that I've been trying to do with myself. Feels like an endless job.
It's also quite a hard thing to give to yourself.
Right.
There's a limit, I think in the spiritual world, there's all this focus sometimes on, self-love and self-worth and non-attachment. Yeah. But we do live in an interconnected world, and we do need connection, and we can't give all of it to ourselves.
No, we're totally social beings. Our brains are constantly syncing and moulding and adapting to each other. You and I now, from sitting here for the last couple of hours, our brain waves will be doing the same kind of thing, and we'll have mirror neurons firing, and that's the kind of connection that humans are supposed to be in.
Yeah.
What's so beautiful about listening partnerships is that you build these very safe and very intimate relationships within a specific, the structure of a specific container. It gives you a kind of gold standard for what relationship can be like. And then that starts to spill over into all your other relationships. So this is really a kind of community building, relationship building approach. That's kind of really what inspires me for the future, because I see that that's very much where we're going. I don't think that our future's fucked. I actually think that there's a lot of hope right now. One of my favourite parenting authors is Robin Grill. He wrote something called Parenting for a Peaceful World, which is like a thick, dense, heavy-going thesis on the history of parenting. And it's grueling stuff, actually, because it's brutal what we've been doing to children for pretty much throughout the history of time until children only had human rights in 1969. And there's been massive developments due to our understanding of children through the development of psychology in the last 100-ish years, I don't know. Parents are really committed to their children's emotional well-being. There's a lot more awareness of that. Even in the last 10 years, we've had all this new neuroscience that kind of supports the idea of connection. I really see parenting moving in this direction. I know that it's something that can turn around very quickly when parents are responding to their children with connection. We're going to see adults that have much less hurt to act out on. And it's that hurt that drives us to plunder our planet's resources and make off-track decisions and kind of fosters greed and consumerism and lack of consciousness around the planet. When we're building humans that are less damaged, we're going to start seeing a world that's less damaged. And I really don't think that that's going to take a long time.
How quickly do you think we can do it?
Oh, I have no idea. Don't ask me that.
But for you, it's really about all of us bringing that emphasis into connection, into our relationships with our children and with each other.
Yeah.
And that very quickly can spark something else.
Absolutely. Connection is where humanity is moving towards. And you hear lots of futurists talking about how technology is getting to a place where it's going to take over a lot of menial work. The human workforce is going to be obsolete. And I'm also quite inspired by the movements in trauma resolution. I think trauma is going to become obsolete. So where does that leave us? If we're a population that doesn't have to work and doesn't have to act out on our trauma, it leaves us with connection. And that's what we were put here to do, to connect and to play and to frolic around. I've had little glimpses of this in my relationships as I've been able to lift out the hurt. Spending time with people has really changed. Instead of having this urgency to kind of solve problems or offload my feelings when I'm with them or listen to their shit so that they'll listen to my shit, I end up just kind of wrestling people or stroking them or just messing about being ridiculous. And I think that's kind of what we're supposed to be doing mostly. And I think that's what we're heading towards.
I mean, we talked about this when you just said earlier, we've spent a couple of hours together. It's not because we edited this and we've taken out a couple of hours. It's because for me, doing this is about connecting and doing it the long way, not the kind of quickest way. Before this interview, before we pressed record, we sat out in the sun. You made me some very nice food and we giggled and chatted and had a bit of a heart-to-heart whilst the sun was setting in a beautiful field on a summer's day in England, and just allowed for that space to open up so that we could come into this conversation and it not, oh, here's my spiel on this and here's my spiel on that and da-da-da, boom, bye, done.
Right.
But actually, when we're talking about connection, we're talking about rewiring our default patterns into a new paradigm, and we have to approach all of it in a different way.
Yeah.
And by allowing for time and space and eye contact.
Yeah, I really love and respect how you're doing this by leading from connection, and that you absolutely won't record a podcast with anyone unless you're in person.
I hope I don't eat my words on that one further on down the line.
Well, we'll see. But what you're doing right now is gorgeous. And yeah, I really like the way that you're doing this.
You just said, thank you, but you just said that you think trauma will become obsolete. That is wild.
I think we have the technology for it. Yeah.
Go on.
Well, obviously the answer is connection, right?
Yeah, but to say that we could get to a place, I mean, sure, the more we come to understand each other and the more we come to connect and the more we come to be honest about what's driving that disconnected, power-hungry, addictive, numbing out behaviour and all the other things that we're doing, of course, that can lessen our trauma.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine a trauma-free world. I can't imagine a me that has no trauma.
Right.
And I've spent a lot, some would say, that I've been quite self-indulgent in how much time, energy and money I've spent trying to, not even trying's the wrong word, but actually just, being with my trauma, releasing my trauma, clearing my trauma.
Yeah.
And yes, it's absolutely true that I've got to a place where I don't feel like my trauma leads my life in the way that it once did. But there's still loads of it. And if it's not my trauma from my childhood, or if you want to get a bit more kind of Eastern about it, my past lives and my karma and whatever it is, I feel traumatized quite often just about the shit things that we're doing in the world as a species. I feel trauma about the species that are dying.
Yeah.
I feel trauma about us knowing the solutions to things, and yet we're not doing them. I feel trauma that there are like children that are being bred to sell their organs. Like all of these things make me feel traumatized.
Yeah.
And I cannot imagine, I really just can't imagine a world where there's just none of that, and no one is carrying any of that from everything that we've been through as a species.
Well, obviously that's a really bold statement, and I am probably very idealistic, but I just can sort of feel the possibility. I can just feel it in terms of how much hurt I've managed to clear in myself in the last 4 years. And that there's a real possibility there. We're becoming much more conscious of what can help resolve trauma. We're moving towards a more connection-based society. So it feels like an obvious next step to me. You could obviously be a lot more pessimistic if you want.
It's been a long day. Yeah, I think I am quite optimistic. I have created a book and a show called The Future is Beautiful. And of course, I couldn't do that if there wasn't something inside me that feels that it's possible. And yet, I also sometimes feel quite overwhelmed by just how many things there are that would need to change in order for us to create a beautiful future.
Yeah.
A really beautiful future. And also, I wonder, there does have to be the darkness. And this is actually interesting from a parenting perspective, because kids do have to go through stuff to grow.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're using these parenting techniques, it's not about your kids never experiencing their pain.
No, quite the opposite.
Yeah, it's about really giving them space to experience that pain.
Yeah, hurt's going to happen. Instead of kind of stuffing it all down, we're saying, I'm going to be with you when you're hurting. And I'm going to help you stay with the hurt so that you don't have to hold it, so that you can let it out. And I'm not going to let you be alone with that. And that's all we really need. We don't actually need to not hurt. We just need to feel safe as we release it.
Yeah, I mean, you just gave me this, I just imagined for a minute if we lived in a kind of society where our politicians, Theresa May just came over now and was there, girls. I know you're upset about all of these horrible things in the world, and I want to listen whilst you tell me how you're upset.
How different would that be?
It would be so different.
And probably really what needs to happen is that we go and hang out with her and say, hey, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry all those hard things happened to you. And I'm going to be with you while you have a really good cry.
Can you imagine?
I would love to do that. Let me at Donald Trump. I just want to listen to him. He needs some really good listening.
That's the thing when you think about what's going on in the world and you think about parenting, and it just really does take it back to that base level. I mean, I work with people on working with their subconscious patterning, that thing that we are just walking around as these child versions of ourselves.
Yeah.
And Donald Trump's the kind of more obvious example, but we're all doing it. Obviously some more than others, and the more time you've invested in trying to understand what these patterns are, then it definitely lessens. But I always find that so funny that when you walk into the average office, it is just the playground, but everyone's wearing suits and there's different stakes.
Yeah.
But the patterns are the same because all of that stuff is unresolved.
Yeah. And even in our intimate relating, we put these sort of big grown-up masks on, but really, essentially, we're all just little kids, trying to find ways to get the love we maybe didn't get enough of.
Now I've got that scene in my head. I'm just a boy standing in front of a girl, asking her to love me. So 4 weddings or something in the rain.
One of those. Yeah.
It's a Hugh Grant moment.
Yeah.
My last question, something to leave all of our parents and our maybe soon-to-be parents or thinking about being parents, aunties, uncles. In India, that's everyone. And grandparents.
People who work with children.
People that work with children. What's the one thing that you feel like they need to hear today?
Firstly, thank you for all that you do to love children in your life, because that's an immensely valuable thing to do. And every 5 minutes that you spend connecting with a child is 5 minutes that you've invested in the future of our planet. That you're doing your absolute best here, and it's bloody hard looking after children. I expect that you often doubt yourself and feel like you're not doing enough and wish you could be doing things differently. Yeah, just really thank you. I hope that maybe some of the time you can remember that your children are good and it's all just feelings. I don't want to put on my shoes, it's just feelings. I need to have the red cup and not the blue cup, it's just feelings. Or, I hate you, Mum, you're such an idiot, it's just feelings. Anything that we think is difficult or that a child is being a nightmare, they just have feelings, that's all. And that's something that we can't really control. That happens to all of us all the time. To start sort of reframing it as, this is feelings and they need connection. It's go into every interaction with that as your mantra.
Beautiful. And with our own feelings too. So interactions with ourselves, with other adults and with children.
Exactly. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Roma.
Thanks for asking me. It's been absolutely gorgeous, and I really enjoyed getting to say things that I really wanted to say.
Good. Well, I think these are things that people want to hear as well. Yeah, we appreciate that. What's your website and how do we find out more about how to get in touch with you and work with you?
Okay, so I'm birthingabetterworld.co.uk, and you can also look at handinhandparenting.org, and I'm on Facebook. I'm Roma Norriss, Hand in Hand Parenting, maybe UK. Yeah, I'd love to hear from anyone that was touched by this podcast or anyone that is outraged even. I'd love to hear any of your responses. So yeah, reach out to me through my website or through Facebook. Thanks so much for having me. I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Me too. Thank you. Thank you for spending your precious time with us. As always, you can find links to everything we mentioned in this episode, download our book, and discover so much more over on the blog. We don't believe in selling you things you don't need through this podcast, and so it's made possible with you, our community. If you loved this and would like to fund our show with a monthly donation or join our online group to connect with other listeners, please visit www.thefutureisbeautiful.co and click on Community and Support. Please also share with friends, hit subscribe, and leave us a review so we can grow. Those gold stars really help others find us, so these ideas can spread. Here is to us, creating a beautiful future together. The Future is Beautiful is made by an all-female team working voluntarily or on reduced rates until our listener support grows. If you have been moved by anything you heard here, please donate the equivalent of buying us a drink. All donations make a huge difference to us and will allow us to keep doing this and remain advertising free. Until next time, I leave you with this question. How will you create beauty in the world?